so glad there's not so many things for me to do. Now, once we go live, it should tell everybody that we're live.
The whole world.
The whole world. There we go. Cool. Wait, what are you saying?
Let me give it a refresh here.
I'm seeing myself.
I'm seeing you too.
Oh, it's actually pushing to my personal page too.
Oh, not bad.
All right.
There's me. Sweet.
Yeah, we're doing it. Now I'm back to the Zoom.
That is slick. I'm proud of us.
I'm proud of us too. High five. Virtual high five.
But we can figure out Facebook Live too.
Yeah. Wasn't too bad. Okay, cool. So now we can start seeing if people are going to join us or not.
We shall see.
So we
can figure out Facebook Live too.
Oh, that might have been your volume on there.
Yeah, that was me just watching myself.
All right, and we're recording. Cool. I'll close all this extra stuff out. Awesome. Okay.
Let's do it.
We're going to talk about data.
Right.
All right. So, hello, everybody. Welcome to the data conversation of the day. We don't have an official name for it yet, but what we're going to be talking about today is data-driven marketing for the entrepreneur who failed math class. I'm not saying that the gentleman in front of me here has failed math class. I didn't. I was definitely better in English, but we're basically saying, hey, data doesn't have to be so scary. So we're going to talk about, we're nerd out on data. We're also going to talk about how you can use it in your marketing. We're going to talk about how you can use it maybe even in your life. And we're just really, I guess we're going to simplify it, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So let's start off with, I want to introduce you, but let's kind of do that with like a quick, what's your claim to fame? What's your story around marketing and in business?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I come from a very traditional business background. I took the typical path. Like you said, I didn't fail math class. Quite the opposite. I kicked ass in math class. I was a huge geek. I loved it. I love calculus. I love physics. I love spreadsheets. As much as it embarrassed me to say, I now
love spreadsheets.
I've come to a place in my life where I've accepted that. And so I got my MBA, and then I went to work in the power industry. So we would work with these big utility companies. So it was a small consulting company I was working with, but our clients were the companies that would send you your electric bill or your power bill or your gas bill in the mail. And what I would do for them was a whole lot of data. Right? So I was doing financial modeling. We're talking massive spreadsheets, Monte Carlo simulations, macros, all that kind of crap that they teach you when you get your MBA. Most of which I don't use any of now, but it really came in handy at the time. And I saw how powerful it was that those tools were, and data was for solving problems. Now, I eventually left that world because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I really just got that itch to do my own thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I did something very similar. I started a beer website. I'm just joking. It was completely.
Of course. Like, why not?
Natural next step, right? From the power industry.
Natural, exactly. Right into beer, right into alcohol.
Right, because I would come home and I would have to drink after being in those spreadsheets all day long.
Makes perfect sense.
Made perfect sense. And then as I had a good buzz, I was like, what's this WordPress thing? Let me start a blog and just write what I'm drinking.
Idea. Boom, right there. That's how it happens.
So that, anyways, fast forward a few years, and I'm leaving that full-time job to sell beer brewing and beer tasting classes online. And really the only way I was able to get to that point, the data absolutely helped. That was a huge help for me. We can talk more about that and how I used it. But what really allowed me to cut the chain to the cubicle there was learning online marketing. And that was the missing piece. So I hired the world's best copywriting coach, David Garfinkel, who I still keep in touch with. He's a great guy. And he taught me how to sell things online. And a lot of that was about testing too, right? Like copywriters, and it's kind of a funny thing because copywriters, they obviously have to be very good with persuasion and sales, writing, but they also have to be very good testers. And so that brings in numbers, and most copywriters are not very good with numbers. So the fact that I was able to combine those two things, the number background and the persuasive training that I got from Garf, really served me well going forward with the beer websites. And so I don't do that anymore. I sold that company and I still consult back to them. But now I'm mainly working with other people who are in a very similar situation to what I was in, selling online courses and in cool, weird, interesting niches. But most of them don't really have that business background that I was fortunate to have. So they're kind of flying blind when it comes to their numbers.
I love that. And mad respect for being able to stop what you're doing, realize and be aware of, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. It doesn't matter how much money, and switching to something that was passion. And you're probably right at the time where like microbrewery and like doing your own brews, like was starting to kick off. I'd imagine it was right at that.
Yeah. 2000, 2010, it was that hockey stick point on the curve where just everything was blowing up. So yeah, my timing, I like to say I planned it that way, but it was complete luck.
Nice.
But it also wasn't a complete coincidence. That's why I got into it, because the industry was taking off.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah. And then to be able to finish that business off, get it cash flow positive and sell it, and then open up to say, hey, I want to teach other people how to do this. I love that journey. That's just one of those, it's a classic journey, but not a lot of people get to experience it. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I found that if you just follow fun, then good things happen.
I like that. So let's take that part of it and let's tie the data-driven side to it.
Sure.
Let's kind of back up and just, I want to ask you, how do you define being data-driven? What does data-driven mean to you?
It starts for me with knowing what's important. So really knowing what drives your business. And I had a really big aha moment when I was making that transition into the online marketing world. And I was studying guys like Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham. And Jay Abraham has this thing that he says, and I'm sure you've heard this, there's only 3 ways to grow a business. You get more customers.
Yep.
You have a larger order value from those customers, raise your prices and such, and you sell more things to existing customers.
That's right. Yep.
And that just put it all in perspective for me. And so I said, okay, well now everything I do, if those are the only 3 ways to grow a business, every action I take needs to tie back to one of those metrics.
Right.
And so it's really easy, as you know, to get lost in the weeds with data. I mean, really lost, really like,
oh yeah,
total navel gazing. But if you keep that in perspective and you ask yourself for every number that you look at, how does this drive one of these 3 knobs? Then you're going to be in really good shape.
That's fantastic. Like knowledge bomb right there, because it can be complex. It can be overwhelming. It can be, for those who did fail math class and way more like into writing poetry, but they're in business. It's like, how do they even wrap their heads around that? You just simplified it down at the basics. You've got to drive towards one of those 3 things. So that ability to stop and ask that question is really key. I love that. So for those who did fail math class, let's say who aren't naturally data driven, what is, besides that one, a good piece of advice on how to start thinking about the data? And let's use an example for like an online business. You've got Google Analytics, you've got a CRM, probably Infusionsoft, HubSpot, or
Right.
something like that, Samcart. You've got probably, and we did a survey. There's about a small business on average has about 18 different technologies to run it. It's crazy. None of them talk to each other, or some of them do. But when you have a lot of data coming at you, what would be some of your pieces of advice for entrepreneurs online that kind of maybe overabundance of data?
Right. So I would start with asking yourself questions. Don't start with the tool. A lot of people come to me and they say, oh, I need Google Analytics. And it turns out that's not at all what they need. And maybe that down the road can help supplement what they're already doing. But you want to ask yourself questions, and you want to ask yourself, what drives my business forward?
Right.
So a big one for the people I work with selling online courses and they want to scale with paid traffic, mainly Facebook ads, is how much can I afford to pay to acquire a customer?
There you go.
What's my CPA? That's a really, really important one. And then once you know the question, the really important questions like that, then you say, okay, well, how can I get at that answer? How do I actually calculate that? And that's when you start to get into these tools, Google Analytics, what you guys have, Facebook's own tools, your CRM. And then you want to verify, of course, the efficacy of those tools.
Right.
So I never rely on just one. There have been so many times where I'm looking at a Facebook account and it says that 100 leads were generated yesterday, but then I look at the CRM and there were only 25 leads generated.
Right.
And that's really important for leads. It's really important, as you know, for sales, right? You can probably talk to that about, I think, don't you have a term for that? The
source of truth.
Source of truth.
We talked about that the first time we met. We got online and had one of these talks. Just like, yeah, it's you have to determine what is going to be the source of truth, right? And unfortunately, the built-in dashboard in the technologies, I won't name who, but there's like multiple technologies where that dashboard doesn't match up with the real raw data because they have an algorithm built in that maybe it includes taxes, maybe it includes deductions, maybe it's got these other things you don't know. And so that's technically not a real good source of truth. If you want to really know what it is, you've got to actually pull the data out of the API and understand, okay, wow, I got to look at my Stripe or my merchant account. That's the source of truth when it comes to money.
Right, exactly. Just like with your leads, it's your CRM. Facebook can say whatever the hell it wants, but when you look at your ConvertKit account, your Entrepreneur account, Infusionsoft, are those people actually in there? And then when you look at your Stripe account, is the money actually in there? Forget Stripe, look at your bank account. Is the money in there?
Exactly. Look at your bank account. And it's really about, like, what I like about what you said is it's about redundancy. So just go into it knowing that, well, business intelligence isn't just a plug and play done for you system. There's not AI that just takes care of all this stuff. You actually have to go into it knowing, hey, things may not add up. And instead of being frustrated on the back end, saying like, oh my God, I have to have all these spreadsheets and I've got all these people pulling numbers and they still aren't making sense. I can't trust my data. That's what we hear all the time. This is important. You have to trust your data or else the pretty graphs don't matter, right? So you've got to find like those redundancies and identify, oh, okay, well, if I want to answer this business question, like you said, and I need these 5 KPIs, well, then what sources of truth are tied to each one of those metrics? So it's very purposeful. We don't need 120 metrics. We need, like you just said, ask a business question and get just a few of those metrics that answer that business question and start there. Yeah, right?
Exactly.
I love that. Keeping it simple.
Well, let me ask you too. So certain metrics, like money is money. You're not going to get any discrepancy there. Like your bank account is what it says it is. Certain other things like, I don't know, open rates or click-through rates or bounce rates on your website or time on site. You can use different tools to compare these metrics and you're often not going to get the same answer there. So what type of variance do you see there? And what's acceptable? Like at what point do we say, okay, we know that this is not perfect? Google Analytics, if I remember back to when I was studying for their certification, the text I was studying from said it was something like 85% accurate. So at what point is it good enough? How do you know when your data is accurate?
That's such a great question, especially around that stuff. And we do a lot of work on Google Analytics. So we have an actual analytics team that is kind of separate from the data team because these are very, very different problems to solve. I am not the Google expert. My team is. I don't know if it's exactly 85%, but I know that with the right setup, the right tracking, people who know what they're doing in Google Analytics, we can get a lot closer to accurate 95, 100% by bringing in the Google, and like you said, having a redundancy, checking that by the other technologies that may tracking. So like for example, HubSpot is really good at tracking because if you're on HubSpot, it does all the analytics stuff for you, but also having Google Analytics, bringing those together and kind of seeing those variations, you can do some simple logic that reduces that error area. We are passionate about accuracy. So we're like, our smart data nerds are like really great at making sure we're getting to 100% accuracy. And then we go through what's called data purification. Or data validation. We do go, and it's a handcrafted thing. You've got to collaborate with the client or collaborate with the technologies to make sure, hey, let's make sure all this stuff is working and pulling it to the dashboard, automate it. It's kind of a set it and forget it thing, but you still need to audit those things just to make sure because APIs change, technologies breaks. It's just still part of doing business in BI.
That's a good point. So you have clients that put in systems to audit those things where it's like a standard operating procedure. Hey, this is our source of truth, but every so often we're going to come back and make sure that really is the truth.
Yeah, we do. Because the great thing about having the right data in front of the right person is that if they're in there looking at it daily, weekly, they're going to see anomalies way faster than if they didn't have it in front of them. Like if it's in the spreadsheet and they got to search for it, but when it's visualized simply and there's like a blip, there's like, wait a minute, that's not right. Then at least they can go talk to the person who needs to fix that. Or maybe there's a tracking link that wasn't put in. Maybe there's somebody that manually entered something wrong, or maybe there is something that's API is broken. So the awareness it creates by having the dashboards helps get that 85% up higher. You know, nothing is perfect, but we try to get it as close to perfect as we can in terms of accuracy. So I think all of these different things we're talking about kind of help get that average up.
Right. Yeah. And you brought up a key thing too, is when there's a spike, when there's a dip, being able to flag that. Because there are so many things we're looking at on a day-to-day basis in our business, and we're human, you know, and a day is going to slip by where we didn't look at our numbers, God forbid. But there's going to be one of those days where we're looking over here, but over here we see a big spike in I lost oh, you're just sharing your screen.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen. I'm gonna show a couple of things. So yeah, like keep talking.
And so I think it's so important if you're not having someone, it's great if you can have someone check that manually. And like you said, so it's kind of like when you're shopping for a truck, you know, a Ford, and then you see Ford trucks all over the place, right? So if you're looking for it, you're going to see it. If you don't have that person in place, there are ways, and you guys have this, where you can set up triggers to say, send an email or a text or whatever it is. Hey, get this different today than it normally is.
Exactly. Yeah, alerts, and you don't always have to be glued to a dashboard. The technology's out there now that we set up the alerts, and you want to set them at the thresholds that that give you accountability at different layers of management, right? So if you're in charge of customer acquisition costs and they start to skyrocket, well, then you want to get an alert while you're playing golf before your boss does, right? So you get the alert at this 5% difference. Like, okay, I can go fix that. But then like, if it goes higher than that, then it goes to the next manager up. And then, well, if it hits the red line, which is still a buffer from bad news, there's that chain of accountability to make sure that data doesn't get out of hand and you can act on it faster. Whereas if you just have to look at the dashboard all day, you know, you're just waiting for stuff to happen.
Right. And the super important thing you said was act on it.
Act on it.
I remember I had something like that set up with a former client, and they got a link from someone new. They got a whole big surge in leads.
Yeah.
It worked really, really well. And on one hand, we could have said, well, that was nice. But what we said was, well, let's go talk to them and see if we can do some kind of a media buy, because that traffic is obviously converting. So when it comes to being data driven, a key thing is to double down on what's working.
Exactly. We connected really well when we were on that first call and said, like, you know, it does not matter about how many metrics you have. It's about having the right ones that all of them have an action tied to it. So they're purposeful metrics. Like there's no reason to create a metric if there's not going to be somebody who is assigned to own that and go do something about it. Exactly. So what I was going to show here is, like, you know, when you can look at, this is a revenue by source chart. This is dummy data, but it's a conglomeration of 17 different connectors to build this simple chart. So we can say, okay, well, overall, the last 2 months by week, you know, we can see all of our affiliate revenue, all of our Amazon, our auto renewal data, cold media, and then even the phone and inbound from a sales standpoint. But we're like, wow, there's a big spike here. You know, we want to be able to drill down and answer that question while we're right here. So there's something called drill down where I can click and it'll go into another chart, or it can just pull up, you know, the actual data here. So what we're going to see is like, wow, there's this big anomaly. We were talking about anomalies, that spike. Like it was very, you know, I'll go back to it. It's significantly higher than any of the other ones. I mean, this one was doing great, but why did we have that spike? Well, in this case, this client, somebody had entered the wrong affiliate. It actually wasn't an affiliate. It was some other type of spend, or they actually put a few different orders together. And so they were able to go in and say, no, that's not right. And they actually scroll over and find all the raw data they needed right here in one place to go fix that then and there. But if they didn't have this in front of them to check every week, they would, you know, that it actually ended up coming back down here, which is way more correct. What if they ended up making decisions based on all this cash they thought that was coming their way?
God, yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
I love that chart. That thing is beautiful.
Thanks. Thank you. We got some more to share too. I'm going to figure out how to get out. There we go. I'm back.
Right.
So we went down a little little rabbit hole there. Just want to check in with everybody and see if there's any questions in Facebook. I really don't know how to do that at the moment.
I'll give it a shot.
Let's see.
I don't know how to do it either.
Well, it's all right. So I'd have more questions for you. All right. So I kind of like what you were going to bring up, but why don't we share your screen and kind of give everybody an example of a simple way that they can track, right? Because while you're pulling it up, I'll define it this way. Your output is only as good as your input. And that means, it's a famous quote that says, you can't manage what you don't measure. So you can spend a lot of money on BI dashboards. You can have, you can spend money on data scientists. You can, say, hey, we got to go do all these things. And we want to do LTV, we want to do multi-channel attribution, all this extra stuff. But if you're not tracking it right from the Google Analytics or from the bottom up, you're not going to be able to have the data you need. And a cohort report, which you're going to go into right now, you have to have the tracking in place correctly to be able to get to this point.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this, as you said, is a cohort report. So to preface this a little bit, like I said, I work mainly with online course creators in these really cool, obscure, interesting niches. So people who have computer programmers. I have a guy who teaches you how to design parts for 3D printers. Another one teaches you how to compose music for movie trailers. Like super, super smart people. I'm just in awe of them, and I love going through their content. But they're not necessarily business people, which is forgivable. That's just not their background. They're not marketing people. They're not numbers people. A lot of them are creative people who are just doing something that they're passionate about, and they sort of stumbled across this market demand for their knowledge. And so what they find is that they start doing really well, which is the hardest part, right? Is finding market demand. Yep. That's the toughest thing in all of business, right? Or channeling that demand. But then if you want to grow, start doing really well, which is the hardest part, right?
Sorry.
That guy sounds smart.
So he's got a very sexy voice.
Thank you. And so, but that gets you off the ground. But then if you want to grow, you got to be by the numbers. And so a lot of them struggle with that. So this is a simple report that I share with them, and it's a cohort report. And so most people watching this are probably familiar with sales funnels. And for me, and tracking sales funnels, for me, I always sort of struggled with tracking those stats. And the reason is that there's not a lot of boundaries on them. It's like, okay, you have a simple funnel where it's a click on a Facebook ad to an opt-in to a one-time offer on a thank you page, right? That could be a very simple funnel. And you get one more person who goes through that, and then all these numbers sort of tick up, right? You got one more click, one more lead, your conversion rate is this. But what do we do with that? How do we improve that? And sure, you can split tests, but then most people don't really know how to do that properly and know when to call it and say, okay, this is valid. So I'm a big fan of starting, instead of with those funnel reports, starting with cohort reports.
Nice.
So a cohort is just really a group of people. So pretend like we're looking at an online business here. Let's say it's a course creator and they're generating leads. Let's say it's a Facebook ad to a lead magnet. Maybe it's let's say it's a cheat sheet. And so what this shows is on the left here, this is the time frame. So you can do a cohort by any kind of time frame. You can do it by a day, you can do it by a week, do it by a month or a year. So this is a week. So this is showing that we generated, and this is completely made up, 200 leads during this week from April 29th to May 5th, 2008. Yep. What this does is it tracks, so that's our batch of leads, 200 real life people. We want to track how they convert to sales over the lifetime of that journey inside your sales funnel through email marketing and everything. So what this is saying, when this says week 1, this is referring to their first week in the funnel. And then this is their second week in the funnel, and so on.
So right after they became a lead, opted into the system, the CRM, this is what it's tracking. Right.
So this is showing that 10 of those 200 leads purchased in this first week. This is showing that the next week, in week 2, 5 of them purchased, and then 3 of them, and then it dropped off.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is for week 2. So in week 2, May 6th through the 12th, 250 leads generated. And the reason it starts over here is because this is week 2, as in the calendar week 2, not their second week in the funnel. So it's just the way that the chart is set up. Hopefully
Yeah.
so they generated 10 sales and then 4 and then 3. So this gives you a very, so this has those boundaries that I was talking about, right? So there's a start date and an end date. Okay, that's the first group. That's the second group. And you can very easily track this. You can go from this 10 to 10 to, oh, 15. We're doing something right. So maybe what happened here was we saw, okay, 10 in the first week. That's cool. 10 in the second week. That's cool, but we're trying to get better every week. Let's try. Now we get into the split testing.
Yep.
Maybe we tried a new headline on that thank you page. And that, of course, is going to occur in the first week where they see that. That's when the lead is generated. So now we got 15 sales. Sweet. That new headline really worked. And then something happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're not tracking it like this, if you're just tracking those 3 numbers, clicks to the website, opt-ins, and sales on their own without these boundaries, it's very tough to see where something is going wrong here.
I love this. This is such a great example. So, okay, so let's take this one, week 4, for example. I mean, this is anonymized data, obviously, but how about, how do we tie this to action? Can you let's go right to it. If this was happening, you're coaching one of your clients or you see their data, what do you say?
I want to figure out why I went from 15 to 6.
Right.
And you got to have an answer for that.
Right. That's the business question. And business questions don't have to be complicated. It's really just figuring that specific thing out. So then to figure that out, then what do you go take? What's that kind of next step? If we iterate this, it would help people through the thinking process.
Sure. So maybe what happened was that conversion rates dropped on that sales page on that one-time offer. Right. So then you got to ask yourself, okay, where do I get that data from? Right. Get it from
right.
Cool. Okay. Why did that conversion rate dip? That's when you really start digging in. And so just off the top of my head, it could have been a tech failure.
Yep.
So maybe the iPhone rolled out an update and your software, right, didn't update. And so there's a usability issue there. Now all the iPhone users are seeing just a blank screen. So your conversion rate got cut in half. That's where it's important to have those flags set up, right? Those alerts.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the stuff happens. Unfortunately, it's just part of the digital world. But if you weren't tracking it, you wouldn't know when. So you're like, it's more of this fog, right? This basically clears away the fog so you can see, be like, oh, well, I know specifically where to go do that. I know who to talk to. And you can actually get there a lot faster than just like, oh no, what's wrong? Let's go to the page, look at the code. You can spend so much time and money when you're not data driven. But taking the time and the expense up front, the ROI may not be immediate, but over time, being more data driven in our business is like, it's proven time and time again to have a much better ROI.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You got to know where to look and you got to be fast, right? You got to know, okay, something's wrong. This is where we look. It's like a good car mechanic. When he hears that sound, he knows exactly where to look first. Oh, it's the alternator or whatever. But that might not be the place, but then he knows where to look next. And if you have those flags set up, those alerts, then that can save you a lot of time too, because it's gonna wave at you and say, hey, this is a thing that broke. Just like if you had alerts set up for those different devices, hey, the iPhone is now converting at half of what it was before. That's the problem. And the fix is we got to update our software.
Exactly. Okay. Now I've got a question for you. For those who are watching and like looking at this, how do you feel about starting in spreadsheets like this? Earlier you said you love spreadsheets. So, how do you recommend people start off whether they failed math class or not, whether they like spreadsheets or not? Where do you recommend that they start?
Well, you mean to learn how to use
to just start tracking something. Yeah. Do they start with a cohort or really does it depend? I'm just curious how you approach it.
I would start here because this is so important. This is what drives your business. Leads, if you're in a business that generates leads, right? So leads and sales.
Yep.
And sales. Very simple starting point, step one kind of thing you can do. And maybe people are asking, well, how do I get this data? Right? And you don't need very complicated software to figure this out. Now the software can save you a lot of time, like what you guys provide. But look, if you're just using, say you're just using Aweber, and so Aweber collects your leads, they opt in for that cheat sheet, they go into Aweber, and then when they purchase, they go into a buyer's list. So here's all you do every week. So on May 6th, you generate a report, a spreadsheet of all those 200 subscribers, or everyone who opted in between the 29th and the 5th, boom, into a spreadsheet. There's 200 rows there. And then what you do is you export a list of all your customers. And then all you're doing is comparing those, and you're saying, well, how many of these leads are in that customer list? Oh, there's 10 of them in there. And then the next week you do the same thing. You look at that same group of 200. This doesn't change. Those 200 people are those same 200 people.
Right.
But your customer list is growing. And now you're saying, okay, well, now how many more people from those 200 are moved over to that customer list? Oh, we got 5. Next week, oh, we got 3. So you can see it's very simple.
Yeah.
Not necessarily easy. You can see how it can really add up and become time consuming. There are ways that you can make this less time consuming. Obviously, using software is the kind of thing that's perfect for outsourcing to a VA because you see how repetitive it is.
That's what I'm getting at. And we were just on this other podcast and I was asked the same question. It's like when people think data and tracking and see all this, they think, oh my God, there's so much to do. It truly is a simple thing. It doesn't necessarily look easy when you have payroll, you have ad spends, or like spending a lot of money on other things. It's really hard to say, wow, I need to put a portion of my budget over here, but you can start just like that. This is BI at its infancy, just start tracking the data so you have it now, because the softwares that we use, that we work with our clients on, can always pull from spreadsheets, right? But at least you start somewhere. So you don't have to go right into a BI tool. You really got to make sure that the technologies are tracking correctly and set up. And then secondly, at least paying someone else to enter the data for you if it's not you. If you love spreadsheets and you're great at it, then the more that you're seeing this stuff, you're going to be able to see your numbers, your business in a whole different viewpoint when it's in something like this. But we on a data maturity scale, there's levels 1 through 4. And this kind of is data level one. There are companies doing $50 million a year that we've met that are still at data level 1.
Yeah.
There's companies doing lots more money who are still doing clipboards and paper during this time. It's incredible, but at least they were starting tracking. So you've got to, it doesn't really matter where you are on the levels of data maturity, 1 through 4, being data driven, like you've got everything dialed in, or you're just starting to crawl as a baby. That's okay. But this is a perfect example of leads and sales. It's the lifeblood of the business. It's leading with revenue. So start with the sexy stuff, which is leads and sales, and then you can always start tracking other things. But I guess the other piece of advice I'd throw in is make sure you've got somebody on your team, or you can hire somebody to make sure Google Analytics is set up right. Get a pro to do it. Right. Make sure that your technologies, you can go to our website and talk to us about technology. You can hire technology consultants, but a lean tech stack, save the money and just make sure that they can talk to each other, or you have somebody skilled to pull out the data on at least a weekly basis is a good start. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all of that. Yeah, and look, this isn't so much about, this spreadsheet isn't necessarily going to change your business. It's more about getting you in the habit of being data driven.
There we go.
Well said. It's very tough to cross that chasm and go from not doing this at all to doing it, because like I was saying earlier, it can be overwhelming. And so this is just to develop that habit.
Awesome.
And it does work well too. You can really get good insights from this. And you can totally trick this thing out. So imagine you had this, like this.
Uh-oh, he's going to do some mad skills right now.
But then you had Facebook. Right, you have SEO.
Yep.
Right, so you could break all this down also eventually by traffic source.
Yes.
How that converts over time. When you start getting more into that, that's when you want to go to more of a BI tool.
That is really well said. Actually, that could start. You and I could go down the path on the multi-channel attribution and all the lifetime value by acquisition channel stuff. That's going to be fun. We'll actually do a screen share. Actually, tomorrow we're going to be on with Jeremy Reeves and going to go through a particular case of Danae.com and how one of their funnels was able to change by having the right data in front of them, but it's all broken down by acquisition channel. It's super powerful. So yeah, this is just the elementary part, but you got to get started somewhere. So earlier we had talked about, I'm very different than you are. Megan and I are very different the way we look at data driven. And I think you touched on it. I don't know if we were recording or not, but there's you don't have to be like a data nerd who's awesome at spreadsheets. You don't, right? I'm almost glazing over just looking at the spreadsheet because my eyes just do that. I'm better at when I see the data, I see and I get a download like, oh, here's what we got to go do. Other people are better in the numbers. It's like working in your business or on your business, being in the data or on the data. I'm more of an on the data guy. You're kind of more of the in the data, right? Like there are really all those different types of people, right?
Yeah, that's a key thing. Yeah, and you don't need to be a data person, but if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, there's no excuse for not knowing that you need this stuff. If it's not you, then find someone.
Exactly. Right.
What's the story about Henry Ford? I think he was in court or something, and they were really grilling him, and they were asking him all these tough questions, and I don't think he had much formal education. And he said something like, I don't know the answer to that, but I can find you the smartest guy in the world who does know the answer in 5 minutes.
Exactly. It's the difference between generalized knowledge and specialized knowledge. Right. He surrounded himself. He paid the people to do generalized knowledge, but he kept people like on a dial pad, like specialized knowledge. He was always like tapping into those people. Super powerful. And there's so many data rock stars, like, or data scientists, data analysts are like the new rock stars. I think that they're like the kind of new rock stars. Coding is still awesome. Coding is such a big thing. Children are using coding. Data scientists are like kind of the new rock stars, and they're pretty expensive. So you don't have to go out and hire $100,000 person to go do that. You got to start small somewhere and just make sure it's somebody who's super detailed who can start pulling these for you so that you have the reports.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, I love that. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
So where are we at? We're at 4:00 right now. What else do you think we should talk about around data? Well, just a few more minutes.
Let's see. All right. So I'm sure you've heard this objection that, well, if I'm data driven, maybe this was in that cartoon actually.
Oh, the cartoon we posted earlier?
Was there something about creativity and how data kills creativity?
It was the 5 stages of data-driven marketing.
Right. Yeah.
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
Right. So this can be a tough thing to reconcile. So you might look at these spreadsheets and these BI tools and say, oh, well, where's the creativity? Where's the Steve Jobs in all this? That's what really moves the needle and builds great businesses. And the answer is that you need both.
Yeah.
Really. So this kind of a thing, this is more the day-to-day. Like this really can grow a business and grow very quickly if you make these decisions by the numbers. And you also need those big ideas too, though. And this is something I learned studying copywriting. I mean, data would have never told the guys who made the famous Volkswagen campaign, Think Small. Remember that one?
I do.
Old school ad with the little VW bug.
I do.
Right? Or or David Ogilvy. I got his book right behind me here.
Yeah, you do.
His Rolls Royce campaign. Or if you remember I believe it was Agora did the End of America, that famous video, right? Like those were real outside the box thinking, big ideas. And that would have never really come from just analyzing a spreadsheet. But those two things are not mutually exclusive. You need both. Yeah, like Agora had that big campaign, but they also had newsletters going out every single day. They had emails being sent out every single day. They had Facebook ads that were running. And I'm sure that those things provided a big chunk of their revenue. And yeah, it made sense to do that. But then off to the side, in the break room, you had this, I forget who came up with that campaign, but he's drinking his coffee and he's whiteboarding stuff. And he had this idea for the End of America, this new ad campaign.
Yeah.
And so it's that kind of a thing that grows your business in leaps and bounds. But it's this kind of thing, the data that keeps the lights on and pays salaries and also grows the business too, but more in a linear fashion, I would say.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah.
I love it.
And even that can be tied back to data, because what you can do is that, I'm sure lead indicators and lag indicators. Like the lead indicators are the things the actions that you put in. So reaching out to prospects, the lag indicator is a result of that action, sales, right? So you think about Google, that's a perfect example. They're 10% time or 20% time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? That's activity time. And they tie that back to data where they said, okay, 10% of our time is going to be just focused on creativity. So that's how you reconcile those two things in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. You can tie it to anything. And from health to relationships, data is everywhere. Numbers are everywhere. It's about learning how to see it, kind of like in the Matrix. It's just kind of raining everywhere. We've got to make sense of it, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. But conversations like this, I hope, really help people out and start to wrap their minds around how to make it a little bit easier. And I think that we've got several different Facebook Lives together that we're going to be able to do, because there's about 6 different rabbit holes I want to go down. And we'll have to just push those to next time.
This is just the first date, AJ.
Just the first date. You're right. It is. This is the first date. Well, man, thank you so much for joining me. I think you really wrapped it up there perfectly. I really don't have much more to add. Just letting people know that we're going to be doing a Facebook Live presented by Praxis Metrics every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. But we are doing a special one tomorrow with Jeremy Rees, and I hope you can come, Billy, because you probably want to chat and say hi.
Everyone, Jeremy is the man. He gave me my first ever copywriting gig. So very grateful to him, and he's just an awesome and very smart dude.
Very smart dude. And he helped you get into all this, right? He helped you take that step from your job. So people and data together can do anything.
Absolutely.
Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much. Bye, everybody. We'll look at your comments later and comment there.
All right. See ya.
Later.